ICQ Podcast episode 330, Organising a SOTA Weekend. Well, hello fellow amateur radio enthusiasts, and welcome to this, our 330th episode of the ICQ Amateur Radio Podcast. Supported this episode by our anonymous one-off donor, along with our monthly and subscription donors. In this episode, Martin M1MRB is joined by Chris, Mike 0, Tango Charlie Hotel, Martin, Mike 0, Sierra Golf Lima, Ed, DD5, Lima Papa, Frank, Kilo 4, Foxtrot Mike Hotel, and Bill, Whiskey Charlie 3 Bravo, to discuss the latest amateur radio news. Myself, Colin M6BOY, rounds up the news in brief, and this episode's feature is a feature in relation to organising a SOTA Weekend. Well, as always, everybody, it's your very kind donations that keep us advert-free, and you wonderfully show your value you find in the show. And along with our monthly and subscription donors, we have an anonymous donors episode. It's a recurring donation. The gentleman's come back and donated a couple of times, but likes to be kept anonymous. So thank you very much for donating to the show. We really do appreciate it. And as I say, your value that you show to the show keeps us advert-free. Now, you might remember we had a donation in the last episode from Daryl McCarthy, and Daryl's in the meantime sent me across a note. So he's glad he could help out in some way, as the team put on a great show. He's going for his advanced license currently. He hasn't got a call sign as he's bypassing the other two steps. He works with Phil Heckenbottom, who's a long-time donor, and we met you, recently, Phil, didn't we, in Free Shove a couple of years back. So he's got a great teacher and learned a lot from the podcast. So I know Phil is very passionate about the hobby. So thank you, Phil, for Elmer and Daryl, and good luck on taking your advanced exam, and let us know when you get your call sign. We'd be really interested to know what your call sign you get assigned. As always, guys, you can show your appreciation for the show and the value that you get from it and what you learn by visiting icqpodcast.com/donate, and then say whatever you find value in the show, send our way, and it keeps us advert free. Right, well, now we join Martin, Chris, Martin, Ed, Frank, and Bill to discuss the latest amateur radio news and to generate thoughts about what's going on in our hobby, as they discuss call signs are changing in Australia, and why are we being asked what's wrong with amateur radio again? As always, guys, hope you enjoy.
Hi guys, welcome to episode 330 of the ICQ podcast and tonight's news roundtable for this episode. Tonight I'm joined by Mr. Chris Howard M0TCH. Hi Chris.
Hi Martin. Hi guys.
Hiya. Good to have you with you. Also Mr. Rothwell, good to have
Hello.
you with us.
It's nice to be here.
Yeah, and you're going to obviously try and get me into trouble again, I know.
Of course, it's nice to have a change to be sitting in my home studio and actually doing some recording as opposed to sitting in my home studio with everything sort of piled up in front of me and my work laptop sitting in the front. I sit in the same place all day, but of course, we're all working from home. Yay!
Yeah, we're lucky you're working from home. Martin's call sign M0SGL.
Colouring in remotely, they call it.
Yeah, right. I'm still going to work. Moving over to Germany, we have Mr. Ed Durrant DD5LP. Hi, Ed.
Yeah, hi, guys. Hi, everybody.
Yeah, I take it all's well in Germany at the moment?
Yeah, apart from the tourists coming back with COVID-19 from Spain. But I know you've got that problem in the UK as well.
Yeah, that was a bit of a spanner. Yeah, I did.
Is that a pound in the pot for mentioning that word?
What, Spain? Oh dear, behave anyway. I will behave. Also, as I move across the pond, we got Mr. Frank Howell, K4FMH. Hi, Frank.
Across the pond, you may have Frank Howell, but he's otherwise indisposed.
The other side of the pond, we have Mr. Bill Barnes, WC3B, and not what I put in the note on your name, Bill, did I? I got it wrong in the thing.
At this point, I just assume you're just making fun of me and giving me a hard time for changing my call sign after 29 years. Anyway, good evening, everybody. Glad I'm here again.
Right, guys. Well, Unfortunately, Frank was with us a few minutes ago. His internet seems to have dropped at the moment, or he's had to disappear to do something very important. So hopefully Frank will join us fairly shortly. Right, first news story. Ed, I'm going to throw this one to you because although I've gone through it fairly quickly, you put this one in because it was a breaking news story of today, and I haven't fully digested it. But over to you, Ed, about the ACMA update.
It is breaking news announced by the ACMA, which is the regulatory body in Australia. And today is the 29th of July when we're recording. They've announced acceptance of some proposals that have been rolling around for a little while. They're related to the call signs in use by amateur radio in Australia. Up until this point, they have had a rather interesting structure. All call signs start VK, of course, then you get the number for the state. That's fairly okay, but then after that, if you had the middle license, the standard license, your call sign would start with a H, an L, an M, an N, a P, or a V. If you had the basic license, the foundation license, it would actually be 4 characters starting with F. And then, if it's not one of those, then it's an advanced license, which is the top, like the extra. So actually quite confusing. And the additional problem is there are some digital data modes that won't allow for the length of the 7 characters of the foundation call sign. And as of about 6 months ago, the Australian foundation class were allowed to use all digital modes. They had problems. What's been decided is that now the VK number and then 3 letters can be used by any of the license classes. On top of that, or in parallel to that, the state number, so VK3, VK2, whatever, is you no longer have to change if you move states within Australia. What that means is you can get a call sign for life. It's somewhat similar to what's also possible in the US. It's not a vanity call sign. It's just simply that they're saying, look, if you want to find out what class somebody is, look at the online database and it'll tell you there. Otherwise, everybody has, the ability to have a VK number, 3-letter call sign, with the exception of repeaters and beacons, which use the R letter, which is reserved. But overall, much simpler structure now than it was before, but it'll take a while to get used to.
All right, Ed. So this looks an interesting document. There are other links off for all sorts of things, which are quite useful in the hobby. So, but cleaning up something like this looks good.
Yeah, there's one actually quite a nice little link in there. This is an update email that the ACMA put out to all Australian licensees, and they put the useful things in there. One of them is a very simple Excel spreadsheet that allows you to work out how far away from your antenna people have to be safe. So that's against EME, so electromagnetic radiation problems. So all that's in our show notes. Worth a look. And yeah, that's about it, I guess. I don't know if anybody else has any comments on that, but hi to all our Australian listeners.
I have a couple of comments. I mean, initially, we mentioned that they might be doing this because some of the digital modes might not support the longer call signs. I mean, surely to some extent this is down to the programmers of that software. But more call signs, I do wonder that, like the M7s when they come out, does that mean there'll be more call signs and rarer call signs to work? I remember when I was one of the first M6s, I think I was in the first batch of the M6s, people were queuing up to work me. So I wonder if there'll be more call signs out of this. But I also asked the question, is this compulsory? Because I do feel sorry for those that might have already had QSL cards printed that now have to have them reprinted.
No, it's not compulsory. If somebody's got the foundation call, let's say VK4FABC, they can keep that call sign. There's not a problem. If they say, hang on, I want to do digital modes, and the particular digital mode I want to use won't let me use such a long call sign, then they can actually apply for and get a shorter call sign.
And can they run it in conjunction, do you know?
I mean, as well as, I don't know. That's where the links in the show notes come if people want to look at that.
I've not read those yet.
No, but I'm saying for people in Australia that might be interested. The other thing there is the state number. When you first get a call sign, so when you first pass the exam and get your call sign, you still have to have the number for the state in which you live. So in other words, for New South Wales, it's got to be 2, Queensland 4, and so on. It's then if you actually physically move where you live, you don't have to change and get a brand new call sign, which was what you used to have to do. So that simplifies it a bit. So new call signs from abroad, no, it's still going to be a similar kind of structure. So nothing new there, no new structure to
nothing
to
rare to work.
Nothing rare, that's the word I'm looking for.
So I think this, to me, sounds quite sensible. I mean, you particularly mentioned about the call signs being quite long and compatibility with certain software. Certainly on the HMS Belfast, we fairly regularly have special event call signs. Well, it's already a special event, but different special event call signs for different events. And they can be quite long. And we have in the past had problems with some of the digital software. I think Bill was saying before the recording that actually that's perhaps not an issue anymore, but certainly we've had problems there in the past. So I think this is quite sensible. Interesting that here in the UK, we also can differentiate someone by their call sign if they've got a foundation, intermediate or full license. And so, for example, I have 3 call signs, so there's 3 levels of license that I've got throughout my amateur career. And actually, I sometimes think, does it really, in a way that kind of almost promotes the elitist, being able to tell what someone's license level is by their call sign. I think, well, does that really matter? We're all amateurs. So I actually think it's a good idea that we take away that, and maybe we should think about in the UK actually having a system in the future where we don't identify the person's license level by their call sign.
Another difference between Australia and the UK, of course, is in Australia you still have to pay for your license every year. So in the majority of cases, when somebody changes their call sign, they'll release the old one for reuse. Otherwise, they're paying twice for nothing.
Yeah, well, that's interesting as well. Bill, you said that you believe that the software writers are now doing something for people with long call signs. Is that correct?
The only one I'm aware of is the more recent versions of WSJTX did some stuff to it for long call signs, compound call signs, etc., for like special events and stuff. But QSOs, I think, take a little bit longer. Either way, I just, I want to encourage all my Aussie friends out there that, have a 4-character suffix on their call sign. Get a 3-character suffix. Get on FT8. I still need to work some more stations for worked all VK call areas, guys. Help me out here.
There you go. You heard it first from Bill. Now, if I'm correct, I've just seen Frank reconnect. Frank, I hope you heard enough of the discussion, but what's your thoughts on this Australian story?
Well, I think Ed's view is very valid. I think Ed has been there and has a call sign and understands it very well. I took the time on this story to actually look at the agency and their data and that kind of thing, and it's not too unlike the U.S. in that you actually can access individual amateur license records and things of that nature. I looked at the entire news bulletin and also looked at their 5-year plan. In Australia, the folks in the radio business there made a lot of people mad by advocating doing away with their shortwave programming. And okay, fair enough. But it looks like they're continuing to nuance and clean things up in general with regard to the provision of radio, as their phrase would be. So, it's just clarifying some things. It's the kind of tidying up that eventually amateur radio bubbles up to the top desk, and I see it as that going on.
Yeah. Well, as I say, I think it's a good document, and it's probably the right move to bring call signs into line. For our next news story, this one may go a bit long, guys. An ARRL director asks, what's wrong with amateur radio? Well, where do I start? Okay, I'm not going to go first on this one because the boys know my feelings on this one. But it's an ARRL story, so Frank, do you want to go first on this one?
Sure, I can. And just to give a context for this is Riaz Yaram, N2RJ, active contester, recently became the director for the Hudson Division, unseating a fairly prominent and fairly powerful in terms of his committee appointments director there. So she's in her first term, and she sent out a tweet just before a board meeting. So she was perhaps trying to, get some feedback for a board meeting because, after all, they are evaluating candidates to be the new CEO. So I put her tweet in that context. A different frame on it is that anytime you ask a question of what's wrong, you're not going to get many what's right responses. So it's fine to shout in a big room, and that's basically what she did by sending it out on Twitter. It is not a structured, high-quality data collection. So I want to make that, that distinction. And she got some very thoughtful responses, a couple of blog posts that we have the links for in the show notes. She got some fairly narrow responses, such as the XYL and sometimes co-host of the Ham Radio Workbench, Brittany KF8IJZ, talked about the blatant sexist culture in U.S. amateur radio. And, hey, won't you think about that when you realize you don't have as many women in U.S. ham radio. So you had a lot of nuanced things like that. The particular two blog posts by Razvan Fatu, M0HZH, was fairly thoughtful. It's somewhat narrow, but I encourage everyone to read it, because thinking about what is amateur radio, you're never going to get an answer to that kind of question, but it's good to talk about. And he begins to go through some history, as I have done in some talks to the Sutton and Cheam Club, as well as the Denby Dale Club, in thinking about that. So I think the most prescient question, and Martin, I may steal a little bit of your thunder, but let me just take one little bolt of lightning. Are they going to listen? And will they do anything? Because this is a cottage industry among board members and the ARRL itself. Do they really want to take that input to heart? And I'll end it with that, Martin.
Yeah, and I agree with you, Frank, because I think we are sometimes in a situation where we keep asking the question. And if you ask the question enough times, you get the answer you want. But you can ignore all the other ones you didn't like. But it's a bit like, I asked Mum, can I go to the park? And Mum said no, so I'm going to ask Dad. And if that don't work, I'll ask Uncle Charlie. Come on. I don't think the National Societies, and it's not just the ARRL, I think across the board, I don't think the National Societies necessarily listen. I think they're in their own little world. And I'm okay, I'm having a little bit of a go at this poor lady, but you're asking a question. Is it clickbait? Is it a tick in the box that you're saying that I've done something? And probably I'm being a bit uncharitable, but that's my feeling. What do you think, Bill?
I don't know how to respond to that, because you're completely right. Both you and Frank, it's like, wow, what a setup. Sorry, guys, I disappointed you. But in all seriousness, I do love reading Ria's Twitter posts. She does post a lot of interesting stuff, and she is trying. She was sharing she did like a webinar or video for the Hudson Division with an update, and so she is trying to do a little more outreach, a little bit more keeping the folks informed. But she actually asked a series of 3 questions on Twitter, and the responses were like overwhelming. I don't know how she actually pulled any useful information out of it. The first one is exactly what you said. Tell me what's wrong with ham radio and how you fix it. She also said, tell me what ham radio and ham radio organizations are doing well. That had less comments on it, interestingly. And then the third and final question is, why do you do ham radio? And as a bonus, is it the same reason that you started in, and why has it changed, if it has? I did not answer any of these because I was trolling to see what other people post. But the third one, I'm more than happy to answer here with everybody. Why do I do the ham radio? I learn something new almost every day when I do something with this, whether it's electronics, radio theory, propagation. I know more about the ionosphere than I ever thought I would. I know more about the solar cycle and the actual cycle that the sun goes through than I ever thought I would in my life. I know geography because I want to work tomorrow's next great DX station. And that's actually the thing that got me in it. I was 14 years old and I was listening to a German station called CQ on 20 meters at a friend's house. And I'm like, that is really cool. And I've been hooked ever since, So it sounds clickbaity on the titles, but I think she was actually trying to solicit some data. Unfortunately, as Frank and I have talked about offline multiple times, how you collect data either validates or invalidates what you're going to do with it. And just trying to get people on one social media platform to answer you or send you an email, things that doesn't necessarily give you a good cross section of the amateur radio population in United States, at least is what she was asking for.
Bill, if I can postscript, something that RIA can do, as the other board of directors members can do, is act on a proposal that my director submitted on my behalf to establish a research working group in which I would design, and along with ARRL would implement, an every other year national probability sample from the FCC ULS database of hams, and ask everybody these kind of questions, so that we join the modern world of professional associations who do data collection and data analytics on their members. Now, get off my lawn.
Yeah, but Frank, I believe they promised to do that for you, and they keep pushing it back. And this seems to be a common thing. Is yeah, Frank, yeah, we agree with you. You're doing a good thing, but we'll do it later in the year. And later in the year comes, yeah, Frank, we'll do it October. They haven't told you which October, Frank. It might be October 3,000,004, for all you know.
It could be, and Martin, you're absolutely correct, because at minimum, what that foot dragging behavior indicates is it's far less important than whatever it is you are talking about.
Well, I get annoyed, but yeah. Ed, what's your thoughts on this one?
Well, coming back to the data gathering and the questions being asked, there was an independent, I think he's on his 3rd year now, amateur doing this, who had some success, but you need a larger sample and everything else. So I think what Frank suggested to the ARRL is probably a good way of doing this, because, one person, next person, third person sending out the same questions and getting basically the same answers back and then doing nothing doesn't move you forwards. But if somebody does it in a professional manner with a proper report and it's actually paid for, then hopefully they're going to do something about the results. And that applies to ARRL or WIA or RSGP, all the same.
And all of those, and I applaud the gentleman who's doing that now in his 3rd year, but they're all what we might call cattle call surveys. You have no way of knowing what the realized sample, whether it's 5 or 5,000, who they represent. And so you're absolutely spot on. We need one that has a probability sample base to move from there. So you are absolutely correct.
Who are they sending this out to? Are they sending this out to their own members who might give them the answers that they want, or are they sending this out to all amateurs via the FCC?
Who is they? You mean this Twitter post that she did, or that was just on Twitter?
Well, this question, this ARRL director asking this question.
I think it was just her followers, wasn't it?
Okay.
So I think my view on this is that the question is quite weighted. So I think we're saying, what's wrong with ham radio is kind of Sadie asking you for what are the negative points of the hobby rather than what are the positive points of the hobby. And I think at the moment there actually are quite a few positives. We've certainly seen a lot of new members and a lot of new people join the hobby. Certainly here in the UK, the RSGB have announced recently there've been 1,000 people pass their foundation license since lockdown. And I think that's a fantastic positive story. But they're asking the wrong question. I think they should be asking, it just gives it a very negative slant, asking what's wrong with ham radio is my opinion.
Well, I know you guys know my opinion because you heard me rant earlier on. This episode should have had an interview with the RSGB. It was booked. We gave the RSGB, a national UK society, the chance to tell us what they get up to. And all I got was an email back saying, we'll look into dates. Now, I gave them a date, 5 weeks, and they can't reply. Now, I've got to say, there are a lot of people in the RSGB I like. I like them personally. You stand in front of me, we talk. I like you as a person. But the RSGB just seems, and probably ARRL, the WAR I've had no experience of, but I've no reason to believe you're any different, becomes a big juggernaut in the Indian form where this big monstrosity rolls down the road and flattens everything in its way, and we're doing this and we're not listening to anybody. And I think the biggest problem is that A, the societies don't listen, and B, they don't communicate. Yeah, and don't get me wrong, Chris, I agree with you. The RSGB have done some great things recently, but you have to communicate with people. And I'm sure my email box and my phone's going to ring off the hook on Monday, next Monday. But we can't even get on a proper mailing list at the RSGB. And we promote things they do. So that's what I'm saying is, and this poor lady has probably copped a bit of my strop over various other things because she's asked the question. She's put her head above the parapet. I've no axe to grind with this lady. I've never met her. But I'm just saying there's lots of false promises from organisations. Getting information out of them is extremely difficult. And it just feels like the old boys club. Sorry. I know I've been very controversial. And guys, you don't have to agree or disagree.
No, can I just say I completely agree with you. And I think that all of the national bodies, the RSGB, the ARRL, everybody else, they need to be more and more transparent. And I'm not talking about in your own edited magazine that you control editorial of. You need to be transparent to the media organisations, ourselves included. There are hundreds of other amateur radio podcasts. Have someone that is prepared to talk to people about this. This lady's gone out. She has asked what's wrong with amateur radio, and people have come back with answers. Now, the fact that you've taken the trouble to go out and ask someone a question, or you've put a message out there saying, what's going on here? Are you asking because you actually give a damn? Are you a bean counter that is just trying to justify your paycheck? Sorry, statistics, lies, damn lies, and statistics. Or are you actually going to do something? Because if you're asking this, it could be the expectation of your paying members that you now act on this information.
Yeah, and I'm going to throw one last thing in this. And I'm going to say to all the national societies, think about this. It is my belief that only about a third of amateurs in the UK are members of the National Society. It is my belief, having talked to Frank, I'm sorry, Frank, I'm involving you in this one, that if a third of amateurs in the US were members of the ARRL, the ARRL will be extremely happy because they are on a much lower number. So guys, you're doing something wrong, because why aren't these people being involved with the National Society and supporting the National Society? I know what you do because I listen to you and I've made the effort to find out, and I struggle to get information out of you. But the Joe public haven't got a clue what the National Societies do because you don't listen. Anyway.
Can I just throw one final thing in there,
Go on,
Martin, before anybody starts writing in and complaining to us that we're having a pop at the National Societies? We are open to the National Societies to come and talk to us. We're not stopping them. If they want to come and have an interview, if they want to have a chat with us, we are very, very open to that. So please don't write in and say, oh, you're having a pop at them. But I'll leave you this one thought on this, Martin. What is wrong with ham radio? Nobody knows what ham stands for. We know what CB stands for. It's Citizen Band. Ham, what's that? I'll give you a clue. Before ham radio, it has a lot of money. After ham radio, it's had a lot of money.
Martin, let me interject that the ARRL, the previous CEO, did have a standing interview with us. The current interim one was also invited, and I just take him at his word. He said, look, I'm just caretaker. I really don't want to speak for the board because I can't, so I'm not going to do it. We'll see what the new CEO, how he or she wants to do. So I'm not arguing with you, not disagreeing with you. I'm just saying, to give them fair hearing, we did have a standing arrangement with Howard Mickle, and I hope we have one again with whoever it's going to be.
Yeah, Frank, I know we had Howard Mickle, and I got a lot of respect for Howard. No, as I said, my biggest problem is I've got a lot of respect for people, a large number of people in the ARRL and in the RSGB. As individuals, I've got a lot of respect for them. As organisations, I'm now beginning to question sufficiently that I'm wondering whether maybe I've stopped my RSGB membership. I'm thinking about it. Okay, I got another 4 months to make the decision because he's on a standing order. But I'm at that stage. Anyway, we can keep on this one all night. Moving on, over there in Germany, and Ed didn't have anything to do with this, honest, there's unauthorized transmission in the 144 satellite allocation. And it turns out there's these water virtualizers and energizers that are transmitting on 144.010 megahertz to 144.020 megahertz. So it's an annoyance, isn't it, Ed?
Well, any equipment that's set up to operate within an amateur band that is a primary amateur band in whichever country, they're simply breaking the law. I've no doubt these were not made in China. They were made in the US, apparently. Whether perhaps built in China but designed in the US. Water purifiers using RF instead of chemicals, effectively. And in different sizes up to industrial sized. So I guess the industrial sized ones will be causing the most interference because they'll be the highest level of power. Yeah, it should just be reported to BNetSA and they should go and close them down. End of story.
Yeah, this is just another company that's blatantly, obviously not done their homework and just picked a frequency. Oh, that looks a good frequency. Let's use that. That's what annoys me.
To the US guys, is the part at the bottom of the 2 meter band in the US that's allowed for this kind of stuff? And is that why it's happened? Because these things have been imported from the US?
I don't know. I'd have to pull up the allocation chart, Ed. Bill, do you happen to know?
It's primary for, it's CW 144. Actually, no, it's the beginning SSB band, but it's definitely primary allocation. And I'm not exactly sure if these things were imported from the United States. I just, found a United States company that was making them when I did a quick Google search.
Okay.
I'm assuming they're coming from, Eastern regions such as the China because that's where this kind of stuff generally shows up from. And I don't know what the allocations of bands are in China.
I think what it could be is that a design gets designed, and how many times we hear that when it goes to manufacture, they remove components, and they could have just changed the frequencies because it was cheaper.
You say that, but apparently it's actually in the manual. It's in the product description, 144.015 megahertz. So that's what it's being designed to work on. So clearly, whoever designed it either didn't check or deliberately put it in the emitter band. So it's just an illegal device. It's just an illegal device. Also, what's interesting is that, I mean, I did a quick look at what a water energizer is. It does sound, and I don't, happy to be corrected on this, but it does look a bit snake oily, using RF to somehow vitalize or energize the water. They're claiming all kinds of health benefits.
This sounds very much like those ionizers from the 80s, doesn't it? Remember
those? I mean, it just seems a bit questionable, really, as a product, and the fact that it's also spewing out RF on a frequency they shouldn't be on is yes. He says that it's apparently, this report talks about, they are generating considerable field strength and heard over a long range. So it's and apparently they're very stable in frequency, but they can fluctuate a few hundred hertz. So I don't know if they're crystal controlled, whether I don't know, but clearly it's in they picked the wrong frequency, basically.
Yeah, certainly have. Frank, did you want to last say on this one?
I think it's a great segue to our next story. We sometimes celebrate all of the kind of revolution in microelectronics and Internet of Things and electronics of everything, it seems. And as that happens, in the political atmosphere of government regulates business too hard, you get those two things colliding, and then you get these little inventions that the engineer may not have a clue and may not bother to look at a frequency allocation chart, etc. So those sort of two forces are colliding, and our next story really exemplifies that. So I think this is a continuing pattern, that as we collectively have more electronic stuff, we're going to have more of this kind of thing.
Certainly. Well, let's move on to the next news story. The FCC fines HobbyKing nearly £3 million for marketing an unauthorized drone transmitter. And seeing as you mentioned it, Frank, why don't you go first?
Okay, thanks. A couple of years ago, we covered part of this story, but it was the notice of apparent liability that was issued by the FCC to the hobby online vendor, HobbyKing, that, hey, we think you've committed this foul. Show us why you have not. Otherwise, we're going to put a penalty on you. Here's the penalty. They issued a forfeiture order and a fine of almost $3 million, $2.8 million, because they marketed transmitters for drone aircraft. And we have oodles of these things that don't comply with FCC rules. So Laura Smith, who's the head of the FCC Enforcement Bureau, she's the person that works with the ARRL's Volunteer Monitor program headed by Riley Hollingsworth. We've talked about that before. Her agency came down on this because they did not get proper certification in the frequency bands and the power levels for what their transmitters could do. Bear in mind, many of our listeners buy stuff from HobbyKing. Some of us here on this podcast buy batteries and other things. HobbyKing is an expression of the maker movement as a retail force. But just like the previous story, you got to play by the rules when you transmit RF. And so this would give a big signal for HobbyKing, because they had 65 drone aircraft models that the FCC identified that were simply not compliant. And they were told in June of 2018, hey, we see this, do something about it. And they haven't. They got 30 days to pay the fine. It'll go to the Department of Justice, and we'll see what goes from there.
Yeah, well, as I say, that I hear where you're coming from. It's a big fine, but they've had time to deal with it. Bill, what's your thoughts on this one?
I agree with Frank. My only question is what happens on day 31 when they don't pay? That's my only question.
We'll send the boys round.
Well, apparently, if it fails to do so, the matter will be referred to the Department of Justice for collection. So I think they send the boys round, I think.
Well, that's the question is, where's this company based out of?
Well, they would be based in the U.S., I think, Bill, and we'll. I'm going to Google them while I'm talking here.
Yeah, I pulled them up.
Yeah, are they in the U.S.?
They'll probably have assets in the US, won't they? Probably have. If they're a big company, they'll have assets in the US.
They could be renting a warehouse in the US.
Yeah.
In which case, they're not there.
They specifically have a About Us page. It doesn't list a home location.
Home location.
I'm assuming they're
Kong.
Overseas.
It's
Hong
Kong based.
But they have worldwide warehouses. I think one in Holland, one in the US, one possibly even in the UK. I'm not sure about that. But yeah, where their legal company is. But I mean, if they must have some legal registration within the US for the FCC to have actually sent this order to them, as in, you know, do something about this. So there probably is some HobbyKing USA subcontractor or whatever.
Well, anyway, I still think it'll be interesting to see if they do comply.
Yeah, well, to say, we'll see, and maybe they get their warehouse seized. Martin, you've been very quiet on this one. Everybody else said a go. What do you think?
My first thoughts are, how big is HobbyKing? I mean, we talk about nearly $3 million. Is that going to hurt them, or is that just chicken feed? There's no point giving someone a $3 million fine. Yeah, that's a huge amount of money to any one of us on this podcast. But if you're worth, hundreds of billions of dollars, then, that's fining us 50p, isn't it? So, that would be my first question. But it is nice to see, the regulators getting involved and putting, what could potentially be a decent fine on people that are producing questionable or illegal product. And similar to the last story, I really think that the national regulators, the FCC, Ofcom, things like that, need to start hitting the companies that are producing this, and they all need to get together. So let's say, we mentioned that, where are they based? Are they in America, UK, Hong Kong, wherever? If all the regulators teamed up together, like, okay, these are being shipped out from America, they're all being used in America. Well, hang on a second, the company's in Hong Kong, then perhaps there needs to be some cooperational things with the regulators that actually says, okay, well, the Hong Kong people will get involved and put the fine on these people. So, there is some liability across borders. I know that there are, potentially between different companies, there may be, different countries, there may be different politics involved, but surely when it comes to radio, we're all working together for effectively the same spectrum.
So you're saying it has to go back through the ITU then in that case?
No, actually, there is a HobbyKing USA LLC corporation.
There you go.
I was going to say, I just found that too.
Now, once it goes to DOJ, they can stop importability. So, they can, in fact, stop their sales, the legitimate sales anyway, of their products in the U.S.
Their global net sales for 2019 was $138.2 million.
If you look at the Wikipedia page for HobbyKing, that's right. There's a link to the order actually from the FCC. If you look at the Wikipedia page for HobbyKing, it's actually 2018 when this was first raised.
Right.
And it's actually it's only in the last week or so that the FCC have now got a forfeiture order against HobbyKing USA, which is actually called ABC Fulfillment Services.
And they have a second one called Indubitably.
I was going to you to pronounce that one, Frank. Yeah.
Okay.
So they're the company. So it's actually their US branch, basically, essentially that they're targeting rather than the Hong Kong company. But yes, it's quite a long, there's a 19-page forfeiture order you can read if you go to the Wikipedia page of HobbyKing. There's a link there which tells you all about this story, and it's been going on for 2 years now. So I think finally the FCC said, right, you've got to pay up.
They have to challenge the company within their own country, within the US, because as of about 12 hours ago, all extradition orders, etc., from Hong Kong to the US, the UK, and Australia have been cancelled as part of the latest arguments between China and the West. So you can't take any action against the company in Hong Kong now.
But let me give you an example that just happened of what you can do and why being in the U.S. makes a difference. The Nissan Automotive Company, their CEO was involved in a big scandal. The U.S. issued a warrant for him. He snuck out of the country for obvious reasons, and now he's being prosecuted in his home country. If they have an American company, and they have two of them, as Chris and Bill and I have said, those assets are directly or potentially directly at hand. They really wouldn't have to go to Hong Kong. They can get those assets. So, Ed, at least that much of a penalty and shutting off from the U.S. market is something the DOJ could do. Now, we're speculating, and I agree with Bill. What will happen on the 31st day is they'll go to court, or there'll be something that will drag some feet. But this is a big story.
Yeah, I know. That's what I'm saying. I'm actually agreeing with you. There has to be a company that the FCC or whoever, the courts or whoever, can go after in the US. Trying to go international, first of all, it'd probably never work, and if it did, it would take 20 years. So you go after the company within the country in which the case is held.
But I think that the authority will do this, and I think we've gone way off track. But it's interesting, way off track. Right, moving on to our next news story. High school Marine Buoy transmitter is now active on 20 meters Whisper. Not sure if we've covered this kind of before, but this is a nice one when a high school gets involved in doing something, and this will be great for their science work, their technology work, all sorts of things. And I really, really like this one. Who hasn't gone first? Martin, you haven't gone first for a long time. You go first?
It's an interesting read. It's interesting to read how they've built it. You mentioned for science and tech to get involved with that. It's fascinating. Reading the article, they talk about how the antenna is made, how it's waterproofed, and it's got to be a great way of kids learning this sort of stuff. I mean, I maintain there's a lot of stuff that I learned in science and technology when I was at school that is completely irrelevant, in adult life. But whereas there are things like this that might have actually been useful to do. I'm curious what they're trying to achieve with it. This is a marine buoy. So am I right in thinking it's out at sea somewhere now? Have I read that right?
That's my belief, Martin.
Yes, it's off the West Coast.
Okay, so it's interesting to see where it goes. I mean, when it comes to Whisper, I'm more interested in where my signal goes than where I'm picking stations up from. But I guess from their point of view, where their beacon is heard, then that's obviously going to be a really interesting thing. And I guess for the kids to understand a little bit about RF, maybe it'll get some more interested in amateur radio and things. But I really like the fact that they tested this in their swimming pool. That really made me chuckle. And I was thinking, I'm going to build one of these, but I don't have a pool or a pond. What about my daughter's inflatable paddling pool? Maybe not.
You spoil sport. I was coming round to help.
Well, we can do that anyway. We could just get the paddling pool out. It's fine. It's 3 foot diameter, but that's fine.
Yeah, 3 foot paddling pool, a little Whisper light in it, in a sandwich box, and a few dozen beers.
Sounds good to me.
I thought you might. Okay, let's move on.
In the paddling pool.
Yeah. Okay. Chris, what's your thoughts on this one?
Well, I think it's a great one. I think, like you said, the fact that they live in California, of course they've got a swimming pool. Everyone's got a swimming pool in California, surely. I was looking at the APRS tracker now, and it's actually quite a way out. Actually, quite a way off the California coast. This is not, it's not a. It's not as it's just sort of floating out off the beaches. This is properly out at sea, And I think this is a great story, and it's good to see. This is one of those projects where it involves a number of different skills. Radio engineering, building stuff and figuring out how things float and keeping the thing afloat. Apparently, there was quite a lot of work on the RF, on the calculations. It talks about the use of professional RF software to figure out the aerial, and the fact that we're using the sea as the counterpoise, and it's a properly done piece of work. And I think they were saying the battery, they got solar panels and things, it should last about 6 months, which it should get some interesting information. And hey, it's the sort of thing we haven't to do, isn't it? We sort of play with things, and it may not always be a massive point of doing it, but it's fun.
Yeah, it certainly is, mate. It certainly is. So, Ed, I'm passing to Frank last because it is an American story and Frank will have the last word. But, Ed, what's your thoughts?
Well, I'll just echo what everybody else has said, and just by the interest, the reason it's a long way out there, it actually got a ride out on a ship called the RV Sally Ride, which is a research ship from the Scripps Institute of Oceanography, and they're home ported out of San Diego. So they're actually intelligent enough to say, don't just drop it off the cliffs because it's going to get washed straight back up onto the cliffs. You need to have it dropped into the sea quite a way out so it can actually go somewhere with the tides. And I think that's part of what they're doing, is they're seeing where the tides are going with it, because of course you can track where it is because it sends its coordinates all the time. And great. And there was an involvement with the Marines, not the Marines, the Navy as well in this at the beginning, it said. So it's Mount Carmel High School. Their amateur radio club constructed it and deployed it. If anybody's looking for it on the whisper.net website, its call sign is KQ6RS. So it'll be dash something or other, but it doesn't say here what that is, but you'll find it. Using alkaline D cells, and it's been built into a piece of pipe they bought from the local hardware store. It really sounds like a typical amateur project, but she'll probably be out there for a few months, and good on them. I think the school kids will learn a lot from it, and even some of the departments in the school that are not necessarily interested in the radio side of things might get more into oceanography when they see where it all goes.
Yeah, it's a good all-round project. So, Frank, last words on this one. The US and US schools seem to do a lot of very interesting projects, and it's a shame others around the world don't do it. But what makes a US school do this sort of thing? Would you know?
Money. And I'll say it this way. Mount Carmel, unless I'm just misremembering it, the mayor of Carmel, I think at one time, was the actor Clint Eastwood. I may be wrong, but I believe that's right. So to some degree, the affluent schools is that right?
Yeah, that's right, because it was at the time when I was working in Silicon Valley. He was, I think, still mayor of Carmel. But this is Mount Carmel. Is that actually in Carmel in Northern California, or is it somewhere else?
Well, we'll see, and I may be incorrect about that, but that is a kind of a mountainous area, if that makes any sense. There are cliffs there, but schools like this that have the wherewithal in their curriculum, to come back to your question, Martin, have these kinds of programs where they can let students run. The cool thing about this is, in some previous emails with Bob Bruninga, he had talked about, he teaches at the Naval Academy on the East Coast. And he had talked about developing APRS buoys. So these high school students have done something to really show the proof of concept. And this has some merit, out in a lot of different applications. One thing that I wonder about is they've got 21 alkaline cells, probably because they're light, for about 6 months of power. Well, this little PVC tube with some arms on it to keep it vertical and the antenna out of the water, it's bobbing up and down with the waves. I wonder if they had some sort of motion-based rotor inside if the bobbing up and down would be kind of like a crank up to keep current being generated back into rechargeable batteries, so it would have a longer life. But APRS is sort of looked down as fairly pedestrian by some amateur operators, but we continue to see its utility and the ability for telemetry and other things. And this is just another example for some high school students. Teach them, give them, and get the heck out of their way.
Well, all in all, I think we all agree this is a really, really good story.
It is, but it also told me what I need to get you and Mr. Rothwell for your next play date. And that's a rubber ducky.
Oh, we're going to get rubber ducks, Martin.
I'm staying out of this. I'm not getting involved.
He doesn't mean the aerial type of rubber duck, I don't think. Probably these yellow ones that, you put in the bath. Yeah. Cheers, Frank. Okay, well, that concludes the news stories, and there's some interesting ones. I'm sure some of you are going to write in and say I'm a grumpy old man. That's already been said. But, hey, that's just my opinion.
I'm just penning a letter as we speak.
Yeah.
Dear Colin, Martin is a grumpy old man.
Too right. He knows that. Okay. Well, since you started it, Mr. Rothwell, what have you been up to in amateur radio since the last time we spoke?
Probably not as much. Although, of course, I'm working at home and I'm sitting sort of next to my radios. I do sit and have a listen around. I'm listening to sort of the local repeaters and things like XP and HR and AUAL. So I am sort of hearing things on there, and I'm sort of answering calls as people come through. But probably not actively as much been on the radio. Quite a lot of D-Star in the last few days. I was just having my handheld here, and we'll switch that on, see what's going on. So I spent quite a long time on Reflector 1C, which has been fun. But other than that, not a lot going on. HF has been fairly quiet. I've had a quick tune through. I'm not going to say it's dead, excuse me, because there are signals on there. But it's been fairly quiet from where I am. But say with a 3-month-old baby that is taking up my time in the evenings, and working all throughout the day when you sort of have to be online, and they can see when you're online and not, because obviously we have chat programs and things. It's not as easy to go on there. But that's pretty much what I've been up to. Not a lot else.
You've been busy though, which is enjoying. As long as you enjoyed yourself, there's no problems.
I've been playing my toys.
You have. Chris, I normally leave you to the end, but that's normally because we've been out and about playing and done pretty much the same thing, so I don't repeat myself. But with lockdown, we ain't getting out and about. So what have you been up to?
I've not seen him in 4 months face to face, so it's been it's been a while, hasn't it? I've not been in an awful lot of radio, to be honest with you. I've been really busy with lots and lots of things, but unfortunately those things at the moment don't include radio. I have had the occasional jump on the radio and had a go on HF. I've been on our weekly net on GB3XP for the club a couple of times since the last episode. Apart from that, radio-wise, not an awful lot. I have been quite busy with the radio club. We do... So I've been arranging a lot of things via Zoom. So we've done a few. In fact, Frank was our first Zoom speaker. I think it was back in May now. So thank you, Frank, for doing that for us. We've had a couple since then, and it's actually working out really well. So, been pretty busy sort of managing club things, but not so much actually doing radio, unfortunately.
Well, there comes times when you can't, Chris. I know that, but I have spoken to you a fair bit, even though we haven't met face to face. The same with Martin. And, we all three of us live fairly close to each other. It seems a real shame that we're not meeting up, but we're playing the game. We're playing it properly, and when we self-isolate, we self-isolate. Okay, Ed, you've been soldering, and did you notice the title of this episode?
Yes, I did notice the title of this episode. I'm just hoping you're not expecting me to do the feature. Yeah. By the way, back to the last item. The Mount Carmel High School is actually in San Diego. It's not the famous one in Chicago, and it's not not Carmel in Northern California either, or Middle California near San Francisco. So it's all down in San Diego area. Yeah, I haven't been doing that much. I've been helping Frank with the preparing for the Portable Operations Challenge. I've aborted 2 SOTA activations. One was meant to be this morning, but I injured my ankle a couple of days ago. Nothing major, but going out and climbing up a hill with it is probably not a good idea. Some antenna work, but nothing that much in the way of the radio kind of things. Been plenty of other things happening around the place, though. So the weather's getting nice now, so hopefully I might get out and do some more SOTA activations before the next show that I'm on.
Yeah, well, that sounds good. And Ed, you can relax. The feature is in the bag. One of the rare occasions that I've got the feature done before we record the news story.
So I can ask you, Martha, have you got a feature? You can say yes.
Yeah. I did also, but you are referenced in it, Ed. That I did say that when you hear when this is happening and what the guys have arranged, there is a fairly good chance that you'll be on a hilltop somewhere in Germany trying to work these guys. So that's fine. But we won't spoil it for listeners. They should have listened to the feature in a minute to find out all what it's about. So yeah. Now, Frank, are you going to keep me under control and close it up and tell us that you've been doing lots of nice things?
Well, I will tell you, I've been doing some things. The nicest thing is that my honorary grandchildren, they're great niece and nephew, but they're the grandchildren of my deceased brother who passed away, unfortunately, before they were born, came and visited us for a week, and the Abigail and Liam. Liam will turn 13 on August the 1st, and I did show him SDR and navigating a waterfall, and given that he is a great gamer, that caught his eye. So we also caught the new Neowise Comet as it's fading. So I spent a little bit of family time doing that. But as Ed mentioned, Ed is working with me as well as Bill Barnes on about a dozen or so members of a steering committee for the Portable Operations Challenge. And Ed has just been doing marvelous work. Just one of the many things I admire about Ed. If he says he's going to do something, he does it. And he's doing a splendid job working through the rules and the scoring mechanism and things like that. We'll have more about that as we get ready fairly soon to announce that formally. Also been working on the Homebrew Heroes program 2020. Our anonymous selection committee has got a name for us. And we're Martin and Colin and I'm sure we'll kind of take that recommendation again. It's going to be a good one this time. And we'll be announcing the sponsor list for this year. And we'll make the award presentation sometime in October. On last year with Hans Summers, I quit counting when we reached over 10 million hits on all of our social media stuff. Just quit at 10 million. So I think the program for the first year has been successful, and hopefully it will continue on into the future. So I really appreciate Martin and Colin's work with that, because this podcast is one of the promotional sponsors for the Homebrew Heroes. And Martin, only because I know you love it when I talk nerdy to you. That is November Echo, RDY. I've been doing a little research building. We have the Whisper database, the reverse beacon network database, and many contests have published their logs to make them public. And we can think of them as contests. We can think of it as signal spotting. But I look at it as a tremendous number of scientific measurements of some transmission from point A to point B. They are all coded back to the Maidenhead grid squares. So what I've been doing is building a database of all of the latlons for the centroid of the 2, 4, and 6 character Maidenhead grid squares, and every unique point-to-point connection, of which for just the 4 characters, the 32,400 4-character grid squares, that's 1,049 million and change. So I'm now cranking the 18 million plus 6 digit grid squares, and I can't even think of what that number squared is. So that's running on my desktop that I'm on right now. So doing a little bit of nerdy work that will give me a database that I can then match against all of these logs. I'll start with Whisper to be able to visualize propagation openings, and not just looking at spaghetti map because it looks like a bowl of spaghetti, but there are some ways in data visualization and statistics that we can actually get what are the key components. So now that I've turned you on, Martin, with all my nerdy language, I'll end with that. So I've tried to stay a little bit busy, but I did have a great week of family time.
Well, that's good news, Frank. And I was desperately, I had a brain seizure because I couldn't work out what my grid locator was. And I thought he's going to ask me in a minute. And I know it's IO91. I think it's IO91 Victor Juliet.
I'm the only one in my 6-character grid square because most of it's water on this big reservoir I live on. So I'm easy.
Hey, you shouldn't say that, Frank. You're easy. Oh, dear. Yeah, I've just checked my QRZ, which I put up there. IO91 Victor Juliet. And there are about 6 or 7 other amateurs in that grid square. So there we go. So, Bill, what have you been up to amateur radio-wise since the last time we spoke to you?
Just a few things, because the weather's nice. I've been doing projects around the house. I was able to participate in the 13 colony special event, and I was able to work all 13 colonies and one of the bonus stations with 5 watts QRP CW only. So that was a goal I set this year, and it worked out really well. I also chased a few SOTA stations. I didn't get on top of a hill yet this month. And I worked a whole bunch of FT8 contacts, including one for October 3 Alpha mega station in I think it's Monteiro. I've worked them before on RIDI, but this was a new one, new band, 15 meters, and new mode FT8. So I'm scrolling through the log here, and so it's been a good month for FT8 for sure, and that's all I've been up to for the last month.
You say that's all you've been up to. Probably a lot, Bill, but as I say, great news. And as I say, we'll catch up with you soon, Bill. What have I been up to? Well, like the rest of you, I've been reasonably busy. I did put up a small slide presentation from some of our pictures we took at Dayton last year. And I think we put it up on YouTube as missing Dayton this year. And we showed some pictures of outside and inside and various people. And no, it's never going to set the world alight, but it's up on YouTube if anybody's interested in having a look. I did refit my IC208 head unit back into the car, Carol's car. Basically, it had come adrift. It ain't been bad. I glued the bracket up about 10 years ago, and the glue gave way, so I've refitted it back in again, and hopefully that'll be good for another 10 years, in which case the car's probably not even going to be around by then. I've been doing a fair amount of VHF mobile and a little bit of VHF from work when I've been operating at work. I've been on the club nets like Chris has, so that's quite good. I've been playing, and I know Chris told me about this, and he hasn't mentioned his thing because I know he's done it as well. I've just had bought for me and by Mrs. B a couple of items. One is a SDR Play RSP1A, and I was playing with that this morning. Lovely device again. It works very well. That one is to go in my computer bag so that when I look as I'm on the computer, doing things on the computer, I'm actually listening to the radio or scanning the radio. Hi. But the new SDR Uno software, 1.4 release 3, is an interesting device. If you upgrade to that software, it's got some plugins, and one of them is before Mr. Rothwell spits blood, it's got a DAB decoder now built into it, so you can select the frequency and see what's on each of the multiplexers.
Why?
Well, you can see what's on there, mate. But
Why?
it works.
Dead
All
and
right.
buried.
All
Next.
right. Next. But the more important one for us amateurs is that it now links to the DX cluster. And when you go to 20 meters and you've clicked on the plugin to run the plugin, it will actually mark any stations it knows about by the call sign on that frequency, which I think is quite a nice little neat thing. So there's your waterfall display, or there's your display, there's the humps where all the signals are, and some of them that appear in the DX cluster have got a line down with the call sign against it. Absolutely brilliant. I like that. I think that's
I install that, Martin. I agree. It's a very innovative and a very, very clever way of doing things. And I hope to see more plugins to the SDR. I believe they've written it, and in fact, we're going to have SDR play on, I think, fairly soon on the podcast. I've invited them on, so we'll see. Maybe in a couple of months' time to talk about this in more detail. But I believe they've now enabled plugins for their SDR Una software, so third parties can now write plugins to sit within their own platform. So actually, that's there could be all kinds of things coming out for their platform anytime soon.
Yeah, and it's a great piece of software, Uno. So like that. Last thing is, and it only arrived today. Why didn't I purchase one years and years and years ago? Probably because I never got round to it and I've looked at them. But I received today, I purchased a BHI NES 10-2 Mark IV noise cancelling speaker.
Great stuff.
Yeah, I hope it's half as good as I believe it to be, because then I'm still going to be very happy. And I think it's going to be a great product. I'm going to play with it at the weekend. It's still in the box, so I can't give you a review on it, but I should have bought one years ago. When I was talking to Chris, he's got one, an earlier model, told me how good they were, and I just had to do it. I don't know why I haven't spoken to BHI and bought one before, but I've done it now.
Yeah, I've got the Mark II. I know the Mark IV. We spoke to Graham Somerville from BHI a while ago. Was saying it's been quite a long time in the making. So software wise, this will be a big update. So certainly my Mark II is pretty good. So the Mark IV should be hopefully even better.
Yeah, there are several of these things on the market, but I think BHI's approach in their implementation is kind of like the just right version. For sideband, anyway. Yeah,
and the other thing, Frank, you probably have met Graham, the managing director. Yeah, a real nice guy, believes in his products 100%, believes in what he's doing, and produces good products for the amateur market. So, every time I talk to Graham, he's very passionate about what he does. So I've no reason to believe this won't be good. But equally, I'm going to try it out on the weekend. So there you go. So that's what I've been up to. Well, I'd like to thank each and every one of you for joining us tonight. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. I'd like to thank Mr. Chris Howard M0TCH.
Cheers, Martin. Enjoyed it again. Thank you.
Magic. Good to have you. I'd like to thank Mr. Rothwell M0SGL.
It's been great fun. Nice to be back.
Yeah, and I expect I'll get letters from you as well. Hi.
Oh, of course. You know it'll happen. I've already posted my one to Colin telling him you're a grumpy old man, but...
That's all right, then. He knows. I'd like to thank Durrant DD5LP.
You're very welcome, Martin. And my letter's in the post.
All right, I thought it might be.
Pen and paper.
Yeah.
Write a stiff letter on a piece of cardboard.
I'd like to thank Mr. Frank Howell, K4FMH. Thanks for joining us, Frank.
Hey, glad to be here. But my letter to Colin is going to say that you are, in fact, a confirmed grumpy old man, but he's the main reason that you are.
Oh, I wouldn't go that far.
Be careful, he hasn't had his dinner yet.
That's true. And I would thank Mr. Bill Barnes. Unfortunately, he had to leave a few seconds ago to do a company meeting. So once again, thanks to Bill Barnes, WSPR C3B for joining us tonight. So I'll say 73s to you all, guys, and I'll move on with the next part of the podcast. 73s.
73.
3 all.
Keep your amateur ham radio podcast advert free by donating less than a length of coax. Visit www.icqpodcast.com/donate now. For all the news, links and information, visit www.icqpodcast.com.
And now it's time to have a look at the news in brief with me, Colin M6BOY. We start with news here of an event that's happening next weekend. It's a virtual event. It's a QSO Today Virtual Ham Expo. It's taking place over the weekend of the 7th to the 9th of August. Loads of stuff on here for you. Keynote address speakers throughout Saturday and Sunday. There's a live expo, and then afterwards as well, they're going to open up the on-demand sort of stuff as well for you to be able to go back and see what you enjoyed and what you liked, etc. Now, I've looked at these from a professional angle, these events, and these events they're putting on, they're not cheap. So, guys, we really need to support this. I'm sure, like myself, you're missing out on going to a National Ham Fest or your local rally and want to be and catching up with people. So, this is certainly an event worthwhile supporting. And the great thing is for us as attendees, it's free of charge. So, as I say, fantastic news here that the guys from QSO Today are putting on this event. And as I say, we're going to put a link to the registration form on icqpodcast.com, and you can get across there and get your free ticket to take part next weekend. Just let you know, quite a few of the ICQ Ham Radio podcast players will be trying to dip in and out of the event during the day, so certainly you'll be able to see some of us floating around. And as I say, it's available obviously worldwide, so take a moment of your time to check that out, and it'd be fantastic for you from there. This episode's feature is a feature obviously on Summits on the Air on SOTA, and SOTA Day, organised by the Austrian SOTA Society, is be taking place over the weekend of the 19th of September. And unfortunately, no social meetups, obviously, because of what's going on at the moment, but obviously lots of activities to get involved on. As I say, they're going to get as many SOTA associations available across the continent of Europe to be involved and get as many places activated, etc., as possible. So they're obviously hoping a lot as well for lots of summit-to-summit activations, as well as straightforward activators and chasers there as well, sort of thing from there. So as always, great opportunity to score points for your Summits on the Air scheme. As I say, you can check out either your local or a SOTA organisation, as I say, for more information on what they'll be doing for that event. So that's on the 19th of September. And we finish off with news in Australia. The Amateur Radio Society of Australia have announced that their QTC magazine is now to go fully electronic. Best viewed on tablets or large monitors using a browser. It's very much one of those magazine look and feel type of applications with hot links to web links and embedded videos to go through there. There's also a PDF version which is available as well for you if you wish. So as always, we'll put links to this on icqpodcast.com and check that out for more information. Right, we're going to head over to our features weekend. I mentioned already, it's going to be covering SOTA and organising a SOTA weekend. So as always, guys, hope you enjoy.
And now what you've all been waiting for, this episode's feature from the ICQ podcast. Well, guys, a couple of friends of mine are having an event and have just organised a SOTA event in the south of England, which I think a lot of you will be very interested in. Mr. Tim Price, G4YBU, and Mr. Richard Bazzina, G8ITB, are the organisers. And I think we'll start with Tim. What made you do this?
Well, it really goes back to when I was away in New Zealand back over sort of January, February, and the guys down there did an activity weekend down on the Banks Peninsula, which is a lovely little spot with lots of summits, and it really brought the community together, and they got a really good enthusiasm from the local clubs, and I just thought, this is amazing. They really are taking it to new heights, as it were. So I thought, why don't we do something like this down in the southeast of England or south of England? Because, you know, we've got some easy to get to summits that you can park the car and walk to within 10 minutes or certainly within half an hour for most of them. In fact, some of them you can just park the car and you're almost there. So it's something for everybody, really. And I thought if we can try and encourage newcomers to SOTA or people to get out and have a bit of exercise or just a different aspect of amateur radio, now we've got, you know, such good, nice, lightweight kit that we can either buy or build. It's just a lot of fun, really. And I'd like to think it would appeal to youngsters and newcomers as well. So it was as simple as that. And as you know, Richard had done a very good talk on SOTA at the Sutton and Cheam Club 18 months ago. So when I came back, I just ran it past Richard and he said, that sounds like a good idea, let's have a go. So it's our first go at it. I'd like to think it'll be successful. We're going to do a bit of PR in the on the SOTA website as well. But yeah, the more PR we get, the better, really. And as you rightly say, it could be an international sort of interest with chasers from around the world, or, you know, somebody just down the road. Everyone's equally welcome. And as long as you have some fun and hopefully just do something a bit different, that's mission accomplished, really.
Yeah, well, I'm sure that, you know, there are a lot of SOTA activation people around. I'm even sure that our Ed Durrant DD5LP will probably be out if he knows it's a SOTA event. So you might get a summit to summit from Germany, which is great. And, you know, you're hoping that if we've got enough people out, there are 15 summits in the south of England or southeast England. And, all right, 2 of them are on the Isle of Wight. And you said that you think that the Isle of Wight boys will cover those for us. But none of them, as you rightly said, are major difficulty to get to. So don't be put off by this. I know, Richard, you tell me there's one in a high street somewhere in Sussex, isn't there?
Yes, that's right, Martin, there is. It's obviously somebody decided to build their settlement on top of a hill, but it's Crowborough. They have, the point there is actually, because of the rules, the flat top actually encompasses, I think, a waterboard facility of some sort, which isn't easy to get into, of course, but it flows out over the summit, the crest of Crowborough High Street. Certainly could be a public relations exercise there, to put it mildly. But I gather from some of the SOTA Watch reports that I've read that there is, within the spot that you can actually use, there is a bench. So for the really intrepid ones, you could end up on a high street bench. Certainly being, well, I think you might need one of those old-fashioned sandwich boards to tell people what we're doing, Martin.
Might be a VHF-only activation, that one then, Richard.
Yes, I think so. People are quite used to someone sitting around with a little handheld transmitter receiver. Well, they think it's another telephone these days, but a little handheld transmitter receiver, so that is probably something that won't be amiss.
So that's equally good, because that gives everybody a chance. It gives people who've only got a handy talkie maybe a chance, if they get in range of Crowborough, to work here, or sort of south of England. Also, the HF boys have got a number of other very interesting summits to work. I assume you're going to try and do summit to summit with people that are out there, or are people going to move around and try and activate as many summits as possible?
I think some people may drive around, but looking at the summits, they're not that close to each other geographically, apart from there's a string of them down sort of, if you could put it on the South Downs between Worthing, Brighton, sort of Fairhaven, Eastbourne. That way, there's a string of, let me have a look, 1, 2, 3, 4. There's a string of 5 of them down there, which are basically over the top of the downs overlooking the channel. So you could move from one to the other, but I really do think that people may well just grab one that's nearest to them or their club, somewhere they're either familiar with, or just go for somewhere they're not familiar with, give it a day out and have a try. I think that will probably be it. Summit to summit, yes, certainly, and international summit to summit, even better. I think one of the nice things for this is that we now have a large number of M7 licensees, and this is an ideal one for them with, say, even if they just have the ubiquitous handheld, point to point, pop up, and if we can build a decent number of people up, it would certainly work with breaking the ice into amateur radio and getting people to meet each other on air or in person on summits. So some summits are certainly going to be, I won't say crowded, but they're certainly going to be popular. Over a weekend, it won't do too badly.
Yeah, and very quickly, don't be put off, guys, if you've only got a handy talkie and you want to go out and activate these. Sign up to the SOTA website, say you're an activator. And I've certainly run I run a handy talkie from Ditchling Beacon, which is one of the points. And I was running 1 watt on UHF and communicating with a repeater in Amersham, which, Tim, that's got to be 70, 80 miles away.
Got to be all of that, I would think, from Ditchling, yeah. That's a good haul. I know that repeater at Amersham, the 77 repeater, seems to have amazing coverage. We get it pretty much end-stopping just using a handy around Ewell and Epsom, which is staggering. But, yeah, it's fascinating just to see where these signals you can get them to and what's possible and so on. You know, for anybody who just enjoys the wonder of radio, I think getting out into the hills and just seeing how things are different when you go to a portable location, you start to really, well, I always learn something on, you know, I've been at this game for I don't know how long, 40 years is it? Yeah, more than that. RSGB member for 50 years. I got the letter the other day. So, you know, you're just constantly learning, and it's fascinating. That's one of the wonders of amateur radio. I think you're always learning.
Certainly. So, I'll put this one to Richard. You don't only have to go and sit on a hilltop, because equally, chasers are equally important. They're the people that sit at home and try and contact you sometimes, aren't they?
Yes, indeed. They're really vital. Hilltops are great, but not everyone can get out for one reason or another. And even just popping into the shack, having a quick look at the spotting side of the SOTA website is ideal, because you know what's going on near you or on bands you're interested in. And you really do need the people at the shacks. They've got the extra power, they've got the aerials, possibly the position, but they're the ones that can actually make or break your day. You do need 4 contacts off the summit, and especially if you've got, say, a handheld or something like this, and it's not that powerful, but you're not far from an urban area, then the contacts from the shack, the nickname Shack Sloth comes to mind for those that are dedicated shack people, is really, really vital, and they're well to be encouraged.
Well, I'm going to just put one more last thing in before I get people to contact you. And this is me probably being the oldest in the group, Tim, maybe. But now, what I will say is, if you're going to activate one of these summits, make sure you do it safely. Okay, it might be the middle of summer, but start remembering, if it's the middle of summer and the sun's out, sunscreen, because you will burn. Also, make sure you have water with you, and make sure you told somebody to go in there. And last thing is, it's all right to wander around in a t-shirt and say, it's middle of summer, it feels nice and warm. If you're sitting at a point and you're not moving about for a long period of time, there's a little breeze, you will get cold. So think about maybe a bit more clothing than you might have taken for a stroll on up a hill or something. So I think that's fair, don't you guys?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's you just got to do a mini risk assessment for yourself. Everybody's different. Everyone's fitness levels are different and what they're happy with. I sat down the other day, got back home next morning, had a shower. I thought, that's strange. What's that? and I pulled something off me, and I'd had a tick had arrived on my left-hand side. Luckily, it's not developed into anything, but ticks can be quite nasty. So maybe be careful of lying down in grass, and maybe wear long trousers would be my advice if you're not sure. But what do you think, Richard?
Yes, certainly. I think that having a little, tarpaulin or sheet, something like this to sit on is ideal. Stops if you've got any ground problems or water or anything, damp grass, stops your radios getting a bit bad or damaged. And it's also more comfortable to sit on. There are lots of SOTA, especially English SOTA films, if I can call them that, on YouTube. Just look up SOTA in the UK. And we've quite a number of English amateurs who have made nice little videos, some of which James Stevens, the new editor for the RSGB's VHF UHF column, has made a very nice SOTA. What do you take with you? How do you do it? It's semi-professional, as James is quite a walker, but it's an ideal one to see. He does give the how to get started and what you should want as a little film. I think it's about 50 minutes long, so it's more than a little film, but it's an ideal one for people to look at. And he's a local boy, so the conditions he looks at are ones local for us in southeast England.
Okay, well, that sounds good. Well, before we close this up, I'm going to ask you guys, do you want to give your email addresses out? Is there a different way you'd like to be contacted?
No, we said email addresses. That's fine.
Yes.
For certainly for me, I'm sure it will be for Richard. Email addresses were in the Radcom article.
Yes.
So, how do you want to do that? Do you want to just do that as a link later on, Martin, or?
I will add that into the show notes, but we'll give it now just in case people are doing it from listening. Tim's email address is tim@timprice, all one word, .org.uk, and Richard's email address is gaitb@yahoo.co.uk. So if you want to find out more about it, please contact the boys. We will put information up on our ICQ website as well. I think this is probably going to be a really good weekend. And let's get out, have some fun, do some things, because this is not a walk in the park. Richard and Tim have done a lot of work to get this off the ground, and I think we all should support them.
Thank you, Martin.
Thank you very much, Martin. That's much appreciated. Hope we'll have some good weather and lots of people have some fun. I would just ask people, if they do know where they're going to head, to use and put an alert up on the SOTA Watch website. So the alerts sort of pre-tell everybody what your plans are. You can easily change it. You can edit it. No difficulty there. If you change your plans, no problem at all. But it just means that if you want to avoid 3 lots of people all arriving at the same summit and you thought you got it to yourself, then that can help. And just in terms of who's doing what, it's a nice thing to do. So there's the alerts, and then when you've actually arrived and you're about to operate, use the spotting section of SOTA Watch. And again, if you really want to do that in an area that you haven't got 4G or 3G coverage, you can do it by SMS text, but you do need to pre-register. But again, all that's in the SOTA. If you look in the SOTA data website, it'll tell you how to do that. So, no, thank you very much, Martin. Much appreciated. Let's have some fun.
Yeah, well, I thank you guys for giving me this quick chat this afternoon. Thank you very much for that, and I wish you every success in the event.
Thank you very much, Martin.
Thank you, Martin.
Hi, Mrs. B here. Please sign up to our newsletter. We won't share your data and only send you relevant podcast information. We thank you for your support. 73's Mrs. B.
Well, thanks a lot there for your feature there on the Organising a SOTA Weekend. Certainly something for everybody to take on board, and certainly in these times, a great opportunity to get out and activate a hilltop, or certainly help a activator get an award by chasing those hilltops there for a SOTA activation. So certainly something for us all to take on board. Now, feedback from our last episode 329, radio questions answered, and mainly in here from Larry, Kilo 4, Lima Charlie Alpha. Larry asks, he's been building a radio project that's sitting on his workbench at the moment. However, he's going to put it on hold as he's going to wait now for your soldering instructions, Dad. He's anxious to see what he's been doing wrong, having been self-taught on YouTube. He says 73s, keep up the good work. So that's from Larry K4 Lima Charlie Alpha. So pressure's on, Dad. You're going to have to get that soldering video tutorial done.
Yeah, that's where the pressure comes. I'm opening my mouth and I've got to do it. I'm meaning to do it, Larry, and I've got a couple of weeks off work, and just over a week, so hopefully I can start it. There are a lot of things you can do with soldering to make sure that you get it right, and hopefully I'll be able to impart a fair amount of knowledge onto people, just from my experience. And in fact, when I left school, I don't know if I've mentioned this before. When I left school, I worked for Philips, making colour televisions in the factory. And one of the first things you had to do in your first week of employment was learn how to use hand tools and learn how to solder. And if you didn't pass the soldering test at the end of the week, and they didn't think you were safe with hand tools, that was the end of your employment. So it was quite interesting. The soldering irons were absolutely massive, but hopefully I can pass on some information to you. Back to you, Colin.
Yeah, no problems at all there. Okay, one other little thing just to mention as well, guys. In episode 328, just a small correction here. In Ireland, the regulator, which covers amateur radio, amongst other things, is COMREG, and spelled COMREG. They deal with all the radio frequencies and licensing, etc. They also deal with some stuff as well, a bit like the FCC and Ofcom in the UK. Very similar type of company there. So just to clarify that, it's COMREG that you may need to get in contact with. Obviously, if you're coming over here and need access to information about license restrictions. Or as always, national organisation, the IRTS, the Irish Radio Transmission Society. So just to clarify that bit from there. Okay, well, Dad, so as I say, we're coming down to the end of wrapping up the show. Anything else that you're potentially doing over the next fortnight we need to know about?
Well, let's start with a few other things that kind of a little bit got missed. Frank disappeared at the beginning of the recording of the news roundtable. We didn't say why at the time, because I didn't know why at the time. Unfortunately, Frank suffered a power cut at the start of the news roundtable, and that's why he was vacant at the very start. I can imagine poor Frank sitting there in the dark for a few minutes before the lights came back on. But at least it worked. He reconnected. That was good. On the subject of, amateur radio, what's wrong with amateur radio? And I know I got very hot under the collar over it. But I think the more important thing is what's right with amateur radio. And some of the things Bill said were very, very pertinent. So that's good. I'm going to be doing a few things the week after next around the house. And then after that, I'm hoping to have a few trips and get out and play around with the radio, Colin.
Fantastic. Well, so hopefully you look forward to that there. Right, we've got to thank our donors episode, which was an anonymous donor to the show. We thank you very much for your donation. As I say, I hadn't had a message from you, but I know from a previous donation you'd like to be kept anonymous. So we'd like to thank you for helping keep the show advert free. And that donation, along with our monthly subscription donors, as I say, that pays our way and as I say, keeps the show advert free. If you found value in what the guys have been discussing this episode, feel free to visit icqpodcast.com/donate, where say show your value for what you've learned from the show or what you've enjoyed as entertainment from the show, and so that'll keep us ticking along nicely without any commercial interest along the way. Well, as always, we'd like to thank the guys who joined you on the news round table: Chris, Mike Zero, Tango Charlie Hotel; Martin, Mike Zero, Sierra Golf Lima; Ed, DD5, Lima Papa; Frank, Kilo 4, Foxtrot Mike Hotel, and Bill, Whiskey Charlie 3, Bravo, I say for joining you there. As always, you can keep up to date with what we're doing between the episodes. Sign up for the newsletter on the podcast. Keeps you updated with all the latest news over the next fortnight. That's also reposted on our Facebook groups, our Twitter handles, at Colin Butler and at M1MRB. And that'll keep you, as I say, updated what we're going on there for you. And we're working on trying to get some new content moving onto YouTube. So we probably haven't got anything new going up there at the moment. There's still a lot of stuff from last year's Hamfest and announcement of new products, etc. So if you need a bit of consumer enjoyment, there's some stuff there for you to view. But as I say, we are trying to work on some new stuff to pick up from there for you as well. So that's not a problem at all. Right, so I think that just about ticks everything off here. As I say, so we're going to wrap this show up for you nicely. With Dad, just an opportunity now to send you off to make a cup of tea for Mrs. B and find her a nice treat to go with that cup of tea.
Yeah, certainly will. Mrs. B and I have got things to do today, which is good. She's home today, and I'm going to make her a cup of tea, and we'll have a bicky together and sit down, I think, enjoy the sun, Colin. So, guys, I might work you on the air on the 23rd or 24th of August with this SOTA event. So with that in mind, Colin, I'm going to go off and make Mrs. B a cup of tea. So I'll say 73 to you.
Yeah, 73. So we'll catch you on a fortnight's time.